Welcome to the Beyond the Reef podcast, where I talk to experts and researchers in the reef aquarium hobby, discussing a broad range of topics from corals and reef biology to water chemistry and equipment. We take a deep dive into our guests' methods, techniques, and top reef keeping tips. My name is Adam Sutherland, and I am the owner-operator of Frag Garage Corals, based out of British Columbia, Canada. This podcast is now brought to you by Fauna Marine. I was hesitant to bring on any sponsors, but since I use so many Fauna Marine products, I was really happy to have them collaborate with me. And also, I am now a certified ICP consultant, so if you send in a laboratory ICP test, you can select me as an advisor. Hey guys, hope you've been well. Welcome to another episode. So today I'm joined by Shen of Thirsty's Reef. I've been wanting to talk to him for a while because he has amazing looking corals. He's probably one of the best at growing these high-end, tenuous and some of the more difficult species that I've come across in the US. I should say we decided to do a little promo code if you do an order for Thirsty's Reef. That's thirstysreef.com, and you can get 10% off by using the coupon code BTR10. And just respond to your order by showing that you subscribe to this podcast and that you follow Thirsty's Reef on Instagram. Not a big ask for 10% off. Okay, so just a few little housekeeping things. As per usual, I'm asking that you hit that subscribe button, you hit that thumbs up button. If you want to leave a comment, have any questions, I do my best to respond. So please leave comments. It really helps grow this podcast. And if you want to reach out to me, maybe suggest any guests or make any suggestions, I'm always open. So please get in touch. Just another thing, if you're looking for monthly ICP consulting or just general consulting on a monthly basis, I have added a tier to the Patreon at patreon.com/Beyond the Reef podcast, where you can pay to have a short little session with me once a month to really go over whatever you want, but that's going to be the top tier option. So happy to offer that to you guys. Anyways, without further ado, here's my chat with Shen. All right, Shen, the
Hello.
Thirsty Reef man. Can you tell me why? Thanks for joining me, by the way, and making.
Thank you for having me, Adam.
Yeah.
I appreciate the invite.
I actually had a lot of requests for you over the past 6 months or so this is cool. Why is it Thirsty Reef? I mean, or Thirsty's Reef? Because I mean, last time I checked, my tanks were pretty wet. So
I mean, I guess I've used all online monikers back even in the 90s. I've always just like Reef Central. My moniker was Thirst for whatever reason. I've just always used that name, so I just decided to call it Thirsty's Reef.
So no big backstory.
No, but I mean, other than, my logo that I think 2 years ago, I was just on Instagram, like, hey, there's 15-year-old kids like, oh, I can make it. I'm like, I need a cup, with an acro in it, like a straw and then a clownfish. So that's how I ended up with my logo. This is like, I mean, I'm not trying to promote alcoholism, but when you're working on the tank, sometimes just having a drink, and so
totally. And I think it plays on the sort of addiction of this hobby too, a little bit, right?
A little bit, yeah.
And we're always thirsty for more information and
exactly
things to improve our tanks. So that's one of the reasons we're talking today, anyways. Yeah. So maybe a good place to start is a little rundown of your systems, like what you have for volume. And I know you said you got a 700 gallon, I guess, that we got behind you there, and a few others.
Yeah, so when we found this house, I moved into this house in 2016. So this house is on a hillside where there's a basement. So it's kind of a super tall, like, crawl space. I think it's like 7 feet tall or so, 6.5, 7 feet tall. It's about 700 square feet, so it's about 40 feet long and 15 feet wide. So when I moved in, I'm like, oh, wow, this could be a great place to put my fish tank. Because everywhere I lived, I'm just always struggling to figure out where to put a fish tank and have enough tanks to make it a farm.
And also, you probably have the temptation of being like, well, we could renovate and put a suite in here and make.
Oh, that's what my wife, my fiance wanted. She's like, can we just like turn it into like a rental? Like we could have somebody rent here. I'm like,
you're like, I think I can make more money off of coral, and you have, I think, like it. So it's done well.
But yeah, so I've got let's see, 1, 2. So I have 4 main systems in here. 2 of which I take care of. 2 are just kind of like I don't really bother with it. So the one behind me is the main display tank. So I ordered it from Age in Texas. So they have like the metal framing on the top that, and I forget all, but to me they seem safer. I'm in California. I'm like, oh, there might be earthquakes. Rimless tanks are really nice because a friend of mine is selling his 500-gallon Elos. I think it's like 8x4 rimless. I'm like, oh, that
Uh,
looks really nice, but I'm like, I don't know how safe that is.
yeah, I mean, I've got Euro bracing on all of my
Yeah.
systems, especially for the SPS where you're just
Yeah.
blasting the flow. It's nice. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I've worked with rimless a little bit, and I just feel like it's just like you're constantly trying to keep that, salt creep and
Oh,
spray off of the sides. It's a pain in
oh
the
yeah, it
ass.
was one of my tank is a Lemar from back in the days, but it's a recessed Euro brace, so there's like maybe 2 inches of space on top. That's
Hmm.
been really nice because then water doesn't seep out as much.
Yeah, totally.
But
Okay, so
yeah,
700 gallons. What's the
yeah. So,
dimensions of that
so it's
system?
a 10 feet long by
Yeah,
4 feet wide, and then
nice.
30 inches tall.
Okay.
So,
Actually makes me curious as far as flow because it looks
uh-huh.
like you have, you can't just with a 10-foot tank, you can't just shoot water from each side and get enough flow in the middle. So you've
Yeah.
obviously got I see like some sea swirls turning behind you and stuff like that. So you
Yes.
kind of have to re-hit the flow again in the middle.
Yeah. So I've got 6 tunsies, four of which are on sea sweeps. So
Mhm.
I put them like four on one on each quarter for the sea sweeps. And then my return pump is on sea swirl. So that helps like
Okay.
return the middle a little bit. And then I got a Hydro Wizard, a E63, I think. That's a pretty big. I think it does like 13,000 gallons per hour. It's like
Whoa.
across the back.
Yeah.
So I think Unique Coral distributes them, but it's been an amazing pump because I've used some of the other big brands where after a few years, like it would rust or there are other issues.
Yeah.
I've had this Hydro Wizard for a good 4 or 5 years now. Each time I clean it, it looks brand new.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
an expensive pump. It's like 2 grand or 2,500. But
Yeah.
I mean, when pumps fail on you, that's like $600, $800. It goes
Yeah,
nowhere else.
totally. Did you notice a big difference? Like, I don't know how long you've used the C sweeps or C swirls, but
Mhm.
getting that randomization, do you think that's like a big key to your success? Like,
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think so. I mean, I don't have a control to kind of cross reference, but like in
mhm,
my frag tank, it's a short tank, it's only 12 inches, so it's harder to do flow. I mean, I've got gyres there. It's just, I think for a short tank, that's easier to move flow and not blast it directly. I don't really, I do the same methodology, but the growth just isn't that great there. I mean, I kind of produce out of my display and just let it heal up in my frag tank kind of thing.
yeah, yeah.
But
Is
yeah.
there anything you would say you do differently between the systems intentionally to kind of maybe learn or, experiment with?
I mean, the lights are already a little different, so I've been just, the frag tank admittedly has been a struggle for me to get it just do well.
Hmm.
Before I was doing these are all 12-inch tanks, and then I used to have the older Hamilton Cebu Suns. I'm a big Halide advocate.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, it just didn't grow well, and I switched it out. And I tried Ortfix. It also didn't do well. To be honest, sometimes people look to us like, oh, you guys are such good at growing corals, help me fix this problem. Even for myself, there's sometimes just like, I don't get this thing. I'm doing the same ICP test. The chemistry looks exactly the same, but it just doesn't grow as well. And I really
Yeah.
can't figure out why. So for me, I've attributed to, okay, hey, with my display tank, I could play way more with the flow because I noticed with the C sweeps, you know, there are just certain spots where my corals grow really well, and that's where it gets hit with a really strong flow once every whatever 10, 20 seconds.
Yeah.
So it rotates at it, rotates away. So that's where I've placed all my most valuable pieces that can withstand the flow. Because after like 6 months of that, they just explode in growth for whatever reason.
Yeah. Yeah. So it must be something because I've been thinking about this lately is like, do SPS, like these, flow loving corals, do they kind of need a break here
Mm,
and there? You know what I mean? Like, is that
yeah.
healthier for the polyp and the stress of the coral to kind of be like, obviously waves are coming in and out and there's all this
Mhm.
variation in the ocean, but maybe there's something to that variability where they kind of get to like the polyps get to relax for a second and
Yeah.
then they get hit again.
That's
maybe there's something to that.
I see that because there's a set of corals that I've been hoarding that I've been trying really hard to grow, super slow growing. It's a panty snatcher. I don't know if you heard of that coral,
I
but
think I've seen it. Yeah.
yeah. So it's a tenuous, but for whatever reason, I don't think it's an Indo tenuous. I'm not sure where it's from, but in the time span that I've grown like 500 Angry Bird fries, I might have made like five panty snatcher fries.
Yeah. Crazy.
So,
Yeah.
but lately I've finally put it in a spot that I think it's good. The pulps are out like crazy. It gets super blasted, maybe like 2 seconds out of every 20. And the other 20 just kind of like does not, it's pretty gentle.
Yeah.
And it's been really happy. I see its growth. So
Yeah, maybe it's just more of an opportunity for the polyps to, grab stuff out of the water column too, if they're
yeah, and
constantly
actually,
being
dude, I
like,
just turned off the flow. Yeah, I turn
yeah,
off the tunsies. When I'm feeding coral food, like if I
yeah,
do my Benepets, I'll like turn off the pumps for a bit just so they could try to catch it a little more.
yeah.
Or I also feed ProBio. It's made by Hydrospace. It's like a bacteria that
Okay, yeah, you're doing that stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
interesting. Okay.
I mean, they advertise it mainly to help you with nutrient control, which admittedly has. I mean, I've always had high nutrient, and that's fine with me. But from the research that I read that he's produced, that for organisms, eating the bacteria has had positive effect, and I don't know for sure.
Yeah,
And I'm just kind of one of those guys. Hey, try something. If it works, just keep it simple. Just keep doing it.
yeah.
There's
Did
certain things I'm scared to try though, so I don't try everything.
Yeah, well, and it's nice if you can try one thing at a time. But did you notice a bit of a difference after doing the ProBio?
So I started using it maybe even 2 years ago, and it's not cheap if you're dosing a big system because
Yeah.
Ken takes it's. I think there's a lot of manpower to grow. I tried to grow it myself before, but it just took too much effort.
Mhm.
So, um, 2 years ago, I started to grow or try to sell coral seriously, and it worked pretty well. And then it kind of got expensive. I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna try to just dial it back. I started maybe using it a tenth of what I did for a while, and I noticed these things weren't as happy. So it may be coincidental that there's some other stuff not.
Yeah, that's
It's
always the
always hard to,
question.
yeah,
Yeah, because sometimes it's like once you're essentially like on this subscription model to a method,
yeah.
like I used Salif or Zeovit flatworm stop for years.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then once, a couple people did ICPs of it, I was like, okay, well, it's probably mostly just the trace elements in there that,
Mhm.
the corals need, so I was like, well, I'm doing ICPs regularly now. I'm doing trace elements. Like, I'm probably
Mhm.
getting a lot of those trace elements anyways.
Mhm.
So I petered that off and I pulled it out of the system. But I was scared to stop something that I had done for years. That, at one point I remember starting that and it really improved things, but it may have
Mhm.
just been from the trace elements. So, you get
Right.
kind of in this thing. It's like taking health supplements or something. You're like, ooh, it might not be doing anything, but what'll happen if I stop?
Yeah, so I did that, and to me, I felt like there was a little bit of a noticeable difference in the health of my pieces and the growth rate.
Mhm.
So for me, I'm just like, it's just part of the expense of running my thing because I don't really
Yeah.
do a ton. I mean, I do moonshine. So the main three things I do is moonshine, I do Benepets, and I do ProBio. So these three, I mean, there's a ton of stuff out. I mean, I do dose bacteria sometimes like biodigest,
Yeah.
but I kind of keep it pretty simple. I stay away from all amino acid just because I'm not sure if it's my system is I set up in 2018. It's getting old in age. I've got sand, so I've got a lot of complicated microbiome of which might be bad bacteria.
Yeah.
There's always good and bad. And whenever I've tried to feed aminos, I've always had something die on me. So for
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
I just decided I'm just gonna stay away from aminos because it has harmed me more than it helped me.
Yeah, and I think we get a lot of aminos in our foods already. So it's
Mhm.
like, if you're just adding these aminos and potentially they're fueling some of the bad bacteria strains,
Yeah.
that's could be detrimental. So yeah, I'm definitely hesitant on them too. I think they're good in a new tank, for
Yeah,
someone that
yeah,
has a
yeah.
new system and maybe their corals are getting a little pale.
Mhm.
That's where you can see a difference. But yeah, I agree that
Yeah.
so would you say, is there any sort of change or product you started using, maybe other than that you do recall just sort of seeing some, pretty immediate change?
So I think for me, because any of these coral foods, like I used to use reef a bit. My
Yeah.
phosphate has always been a problem.
Yeah.
Whenever I use reef it kind of so my PO4 ranges between zero point 0.2 to zero point 0.3, which is pretty high for what
Yeah.
people would be like. "Oh, keep it at zero point 0.1 or under," but
Yeah.
that's because of how I ran my system, just where I didn't bother testing for the first like 3 years, and there's just a lot of gunk accumulated in the sand. So I didn't use a Refroid type thing for a while. Then I started to use Benepets because they're like, oh yeah, if you mix it for 3 to 5 minutes, the whatever's in there will help with the not
Yeah.
rising.
There's bacteria in there, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that kind
yeah,
of helps make it more
yeah,
available.
yeah, and also to keep and when I dosed that, it really improved my polyp extension.
Hmm.
So I'm not exactly sure why. I'm not sure if it's my there's not enough. I don't know. Sometimes you just don't know. It's like, okay, I added something, things look good. I'll
Mhm.
just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So the Benepets is kind of your main coral food, and then I guess whatever the corals get from what you feed,
yeah,
frozen to the fish and whatnot.
yeah, yeah,
Anything
yeah.
else you feed in particular, or is that kind of about it?
Yeah, I mean, I mainly feed my fish pellets and like nori. Yes, once in a while, I give them frozen. But yeah, I mean, I think I keep it pretty simple because there are times where I'm gone for like a weekend or a week, or
Hmm.
in March I was gone for a month.
Yeah.
Try to figure out to keep it where somebody could take over for me. So I think I pretty much keep the system pretty simple.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm hoping we can find some like little nuggets of information
Yeah.
that
Before
you know.
moonshine, so it's about 700-800 gallons of total water volume. I would do 100-gallon water change every week.
Mm-hmm.
Before I did moonshine, just because I'm like, hey, I was dosing some of those like Red Sea A, B, C, D kind of,
Yeah.
I didn't, I'm like, okay, I should add something. Eventually, when I did an ICP, I think the iron was like super high, some stuff were low, but basically, dilution is my solution to everything. So I just did a ton of water change.
Yeah.
After I started doing moonshine, I barely did any water change for a long time. Now I still don't really do it, but I'm just thinking, hey, things are doing well, but doing a water change always like kind of dilutes things a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm
I-
obviously you're topping up. You gotta when you ship out orders, you're adding a bit in
oh,
salt water, but that's probably like
yeah,
1% maybe water change, or
yeah.
pretty small.
I think the secret to my growth is really my high nutrient with super high par. So in my
Yeah.
10 by 4 footprint, I run 15 Radeon XR30s
Yeah,
along
that is a
with
lot. That is a
yeah,
lot.
along with three 400-watt halides. So when I added lights, it was more just like, okay, hey, things look okay. This part's a little dark. Let's add another light, and it eventually became what it was. And then people were like, "Oh, can you test your par? I'm just curious." And I finally got a par meter, and as you can see, I kind of created a shelf where all my frags sort of sit.
Yeah.
It's not, and basically everything on the top shelf is around like 800 par or
Okay.
more.
Wow.
There are a couple of spots that are 1,000 par that because they're like two lights angled towards it, and that's where the like my Angry Bird gets his best colors in that 1,000 par area where
Wow.
the polls become more red than
Yeah.
sometimes they're more brown and the underside is like yellow, so you see the rainbow polyps. But under the 900,000 par area, like the polyps are red on top. Like I noticed the color differential between like 700 par, which is already high, versus 1,000 par. But I think I get away with it because of my nutrients so high.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the
That
sunscreen for the coral, essentially.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's weird because I've heard conflicting things. Like, I think it was Meckley I was talking to, and he said if you want high par if you have low nutrients, and I was like, I just don't agree with that. I mean, we kind of talked it through a little bit, and I
Okay.
understand some of the reasoning behind it, but to me, a lot of the good tanks I've seen with really high par also kind of have the nutrients to match. One thing we didn't mention was what is your nitrate in ratio to your phosphates?
Yeah. So I mean, for a year of my tank running really well, I never tested nitrate, and I finally decided to test, and
Mhm.
it was always zero.
Oh,
So it was always zero, and I never had issues with my corals. I'm like, oh, okay. I've heard, zero nitrate, you got problems. But I think it's because I have so much fish, and I've got a few pretty big fish, and I think I've probably got like 25 4-inch plus tanks in there.
Yeah.
So they're producing a lot of ammonia all the time. Because lately I've been reading about the ammonium
Yeah.
bicarbonate dosing that people
Yeah.
are doing. I feel like maybe my ammonia was feeding the corals sufficient of the nitrogen stuff that they needed. I started to dose nitrogen, maybe a year ago. I didn't really notice much of a difference, good or bad. I just want now I run my nitrate like 5, 10,
Yeah.
something like that. But
Okay.
I might try out bicarbonate, the ammonium bicarbonate dose and see how it goes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like it sounds like you have a good nutrient input output happening, and maybe, yeah, I guess the phosphate is kind of what's left over, but that
Yeah,
seems to work. Yeah, I've seen my nitrates drop right down before and then brought them up and noticed no difference in the
yeah.
corals.
But
But
I think
whereas
if you have,
phosphate, for sure,
yeah.
you notice a difference.
Oh, right, right. Yeah, I think if you have good bioload where you're like, I've got a lot of fish relative to your tank size, I think you should be able to get away with, a zero nitrate fear kind of thing. Because my issue has always been exporting the phosphate. So I tried a bunch of different things. I try like the algae scrubbers. So I still run them, but I lately haven't bothered cleaning them because tank has been running well. I'm like, okay, maybe because actually my phosphate started to drop down to like 0.05. I'm like, oh, maybe the you know all the sunken PO4 has been now used up, and I'm finally getting to a state where the rocks aren't filled with phosphate.
Yeah, yeah, it may
So
happen. Yeah, saturated. Yeah,
yeah, yes, I stopped emptying out my algae scrubber. And, things are still pretty good. I mean, I do run a refugium. I throw some macroalgae in there.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a little more competition. So you were saying with the metal halides, because you've got halides on top of a crap ton of radions.
Mhm.
Or do the halides only run like for a short time per day?
I run it I think around 6 hours. So
Okay.
my LED runs for about 12 hours, and then in the middle of it, I run halides for about 6 hours.
Okay. What's your ramp up time to the halides? Is it about 2 hours or something like that?
Yeah, I change my lighting depending on the season. So
Mhm.
sometimes it might be two, sometimes it might be four. And in
Yeah.
the summer, when it gets like 90s here, where I try to run my lights later in the afternoon and evening time. If I started up at 10 o'clock, by 4 o'clock, so much heat has built up. So
That is
I
a
kind
lot of
of,
heat.
yeah, yeah. Because so uh, in addition to the main display tank, I've got one, two, three, four, five, six, seven other tanks in here. I'll just run through them real quick. I've got 100-gallon that it's a standalone Lemar, like a 4x2 tank. That's on a standalone that I was gonna use as a quarantine tank, but I haven't bought new cores in a while, so I kind of just let it. I usually just top off with my water chambers just to get
Yeah.
the water back to a good cycle. And then my main frag tank has 5 tanks combined, so all 5 frag tanks. It's about, I would say, 600 gallons. So I've got a 96 by 48, so 8 by 4 foot frag tank, and then like four, like 6 by 2, something like that, where I put all my frags to heal up to get ready for shipping.
Nice.
That's one system. So there's a lot of lights in here. I think there's probably like 1,000 watts of T5s, another like 20 radions, and then some more halides back there. There's a
Crazy.
lot of lights.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're gonna send me a few videos of the
Yeah,
space
yeah,
so I can kind of show
yeah, yeah.
the area. But sounds like for like a one man operation, you got like a lot going on in there. Pretty similar to
Yeah,
me, but a little bigger scale.
yeah. So that's where, it would be great to have help, but it's where I live. And I've heard a lot of horror stories of friends that have shops that hired help, and
Yeah.
it's not easy to have help that you can, I mean, either mistakes or just sometimes people get careless. For us, this is like our livelihood. I can't risk somebody. Oh, I made a mistake. Sorry, boss. I gotta. I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, I'm fired. Okay, bye.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
just kind of do everything myself.
Yeah, I mean, I think of almost like I was saying, it's like every coral's almost like an employee that it just
Oh,
works for, nutrients and salt water and light, that's what
yeah,
it needs. But they're employees that turn out product for you. And if
Mhm.
if something dies, then it's like that employee quit or so keeping all of those employees healthy and happy is what we're trying to do, right? And if
Yeah,
somebody
and then
comes and messes with that, then
yeah, and I think for you too, just like, for us, a lot of what we have is just accumulated over a long time. It's not like we bought a colony
Mm.
from the ocean and then ready to sell it. Like when you're an aquaculture guy, when I buy a frag, I probably have to sit on it for a year to two years maybe, depending on how fast it grows, before it could produce anything. So
yeah.
I may be selling right now, but all this stuff we started building it 2 years ago before we could get anything out of it.
Yeah, because it's all about getting it to a sustainable fragging size where
Yeah.
you can go and take a frag, and the next time you need a few frags, it's got some new ones,
Yeah.
and it's always tempting for a high-end piece when it's small to be like, "Ooh, I can make my money back." Then you're like setting yourself back 3 or 4 months or 6 months, right? So,
Yeah. So I
yeah.
think if I were like there's a lot of different ways to be a coral seller, and every type of seller is needed. It's not like, oh, this type is better than other. But if I were truly just like, hey, I'm gonna just buy some wild colonies, color it up, then at that point I feel more comfortable having staff, because if it really crashes, it's a lot of money, but it's not like, oh, years of work that
Yeah.
went away. It's like, okay, this set of inventory died. Okay, we'll move on. It's a loss, but we'll buy
You
from
can
you again.
reorder. Yeah.
'Cause-
It's not that doesn't have that sentimental aspect of that coral that you grew over multiple years and
Yeah, it's just even
yeah.
time and resource. Because imagine
Yeah.
if one of your main pieces that you sell is like dead, you can't easily replace it. It's not like you could buy a
No.
whole nother colony.
Yeah.
And if you buy new frags, like, okay, I can't sell that for 2 years
Yeah, totally.
when
No,
it's
it's tough.
different.
It's sometimes if I've lost a colony of something that took me a long time to grow, that's pretty high value, a friend will be like, "Oh, I'll give you a frag." And I'm like, "Oh, that's nice, but like can you give me a frag in, that's 4 times the size?" Like, it's going to
Yeah.
take me so long.
Yeah, that happened with me with my jaw dropper. I used to grow quite a bit of that.
Mhm.
And then this is my own, I don't even understand why, because I decided I wanted to try the Malaysian speciosa. So I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, my tank is really complex. There's a lot of bacteria. Let's Cipro nuke my tank. And I've done that before. And all of a sudden, for some reason, I did something to my tank and all my jaw droppers died. So
Mm,
I
crazy.
had like 15 or something mini colonies.
Whoa. You
Yeah.
had like the mecca of them probably
Yeah,
because that's
I
not a
even did
common
like a
coral.
grow out contest with this.
Yeah.
I did a grow out contest on Instagram where I think I sent out like 30 frags to
Mm,
30 different people. And we were gonna be like, oh, who grows it the best, kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
Crazy. Well, at least you got a lot out there, and hopefully there's quite a few people that are growing it well now. Yeah,
yeah,
that's always the hope, right? It's like, you hope your babies can go on to be, you know, cultured and spread around the hobby, but some of those difficult ones, they don't last long
yeah,
for the average
yeah,
hobbyist.
yeah.
Yeah, no offense to the average hobbyist. Just some corals are just hard.
But I do think over the past couple of years, the average hobbyist and the things we've learned, and different ways of sharing ideas and information, the ability to keep SPS has improved a lot over the past few
Definitely.
years. I
Yeah.
mean, people are, I mean, 'cause for people like us who are like, oh, well, but I still think it's a net plus. More people, because at some point people keep killing it. They're like, I don't want to do this anymore. This is just like, I'm just throwing money away. But if my other hobby is golf, I bring that up because golf is one of those things where it's super frustrating, but once in a while you hit a really good shot, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, that felt really great. And so when you could grow a few pieces from a frag to a mini call, you're like, wow, look at how that looked 6 months ago,
Yeah.
and then you want to keep trying and you want to do more, and I hope that brings in more people to, because I think I keep other corals too, but of everything I keep, I feel like SPS has the highest kind of reward to frustration ratio, because when you do a really
Yeah.
great job, it just looks amazing when they grow into
Yeah.
a colony. Versus like,
Definitely.
a torch, okay, yeah, it grow, it looks bigger, but either it
Yeah.
dies or it looks about the same.
Yeah, the color is a little more of a fixed thing, whereas like the
Yeah,
SPS have that challenge of like pulling the best color, getting
yeah,
growth. And yeah, it's like you say too, there's kind of periods where your tank kind of hits a stride and things do really well. And like we also have tools now to like, ICP has given us a
Right.
lot of, a good tool to have an indicator, and we can kind of learn from when the tank was rocking to when it's not doing so good. Maybe there's some indications, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, to me that Andre, so Reef Moonshiner Andre, so he kind of set this up where we could do the MS ICP test,
Mhm.
where because before I did ICP test before maybe like 3 4 years ago, most of the stuff were zero or NA or whatever, and then you could see your alkalinity or a few things. I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. Like now with the ability to see a bunch of data, I mean, it's not like I'm saying people should chase numbers, but sometimes certain things shouldn't be zero. For
Yeah.
example, for me, 6 months ago, I realized my barium and my iron, they were steady for a good 6 months. All of a sudden, they start to drop every test I did by about 15%. So my iron, for example, was at solidly around one, dropped to like zero point 0.7, zero point 0.5, zero point 0.3. I'm like, what's going on? So to me, if I didn't see that and the tank is running, who knows like what would happen if my iron went to zero for an extended period of time?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you've noticed a pretty big difference when iron is in a good range? Is that one you would pay more attention to?
I mean, again, this is one of those things where there's so many elements. I, I'm I haven't spent the scientific research to understand each.
Yeah.
I almost feel like, okay, you can't let it be zero. Just keep, it doesn't have to be in the perfect range. As long as it's not zero, your corals have something to use,
Yeah.
then it won't die because you're depleted in that thing, just like phosphate being zero kind of thing.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, like an element can come up as zero on an ICP, but if you're adding it, say with your,
Oh, right.
it's coming in with your trace bowing system or whatever,
Mhm.
or if you're
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
some daily dosing of trace elements, it probably isn't zero, but it's just getting used right away. So,
that's true. Yeah,
you know,
people are speculating that about iron, that it either precipitated or
yeah,
it just went away really fast.
yeah,
Um, and I adjusted my iron dosage by a lot, so I do register. So I don't know if that's truly necessary.
yeah.
It's one of those things where I'm like, it may not be necessary, but I don't want to find out if it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty important element for
Yeah.
photosynthesis, and yeah, the zooxanthellae really need it. So yeah, I can imagine. Also, like, it's a not as much of a dangerous one to overdose.
Right.
So worst case scenario, some of your corals might turn a little greener. That's kind
Mm.
of your
Yeah.
indicator. But I
Yeah.
think it would take quite a bit to
Yeah.
really do that.
But I actually like I used to dose about 1 ml of iron like maybe a year ago, and when it started to deplete, I thought, okay, I doubled the dosage from before. It still kept going. Eventually ended up dosing about 30x of what I used to dose,
Yeah.
and I
Wow.
continue that on a daily basis now
Yeah.
for the past 4 months now, and I haven't seen any adverse effect, and my iron still stays on the low range of the range, which I'm fine
Yeah.
with as long as it's not zero, as long
Yeah.
as it shows up. Even like you said, if it's zero, maybe it's still okay because I'm dosing so much of it, and they're using it up, whatever it is. That it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So how long have you been doing the Reef Moonshiners for?
Ah,
Or I
I
guess
feel like
you probably don't do it on all your systems, I'm guessing, like
just
mostly on
my
the main
two
one.
main systems,
Yeah.
my frag tank and my display. I think it might be 2 years now.
So what was
Yeah,
the sort of time in which
rationale.
you started until
Mhm.
you sort of started to notice some better results from it?
I mean, I feel like I've always been a decent crow grower. I've been, when I had my jaw drop. I mean, I feel like maybe the jaw dropper didn't like some of the new. I don't know, but
Hmm.
I feel like it was more that I could feel confidence in my water because 3 years ago I'm just like, oh, I don't know if I could do this coral thing. What if, things could just randomly crash? That has happened in the past. I'm like, oh, everything's dying. I don't know why. Now that's the main thing I decided to do moonshines, that I could have data and I could, you know, affect the information, the data that my tank is in. And my hypothesis is that if I could keep it in a range, then my tank will be safer. In terms of actual growth, I don't know how much difference it really was.
Yeah.
Because I
Well,
was
maybe
changing. water
You were changing water
regularly,
regularly, yeah.
like
So, but it's kind of nice.
25% a week.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
nice to know, like, that's a method that works for some people, but it's nice to know that you can put your tank into cruise control,
Mhm.
learn which elements it uses, dial that in, and then
Yeah.
you're basically, your system's more of like a, I don't know, like it's
It's more scientific to me, which
yeah.
made me more and also like I've heard of, a Nod, for example, his tank got messed up by the whole salt issue a couple years
Mhm.
ago.
Yeah.
I was always worried, okay, what if the salt batch is bad? That was always in the back of my head, even though it rarely happens. I mean, because, for example, Chris Sabella, his tank does extremely well. And he mainly does like water changes to run a system, right? So
Yeah.
there's different ways to do it. And for me, I felt more comfortable with data. And I'm like, I know where it's at. I test pretty much every 2 weeks just because it does get expensive, but
Yeah.
as this is our main, at least for me, like my main income, like I better
Yeah.
put in the work. Yeah,
Yeah, you want to knock things out of the park. You don't want to just, keep
yeah.
things kind of surviving all right.
Mhm.
And it's all about color. Maybe we can talk a little bit about some little tips for specific species, because like one thing I really noticed is that you are turning out a lot of tenuous slash
Mhm.
Befaria with really good color.
Mhm.
And, is there anything in particular with that species you would kind of give some suggestions on?
I mean, for me, like when I started to feed betta pets, I noticed that, like I mentioned, a huge difference in the polyp extension for me,
Hmm.
and especially with an angry bird. When you have big polyp extension, that's when you really see the polyp colors, and that's when it looks super nice. When the polyps are really out.
Well, I mean,
Um,
birds like to eat worms, and I think pinnipeds is partly worms.
oh
Makes
yeah,
sense, right?
yeah. Um, yeah. I mean,
I mean,
what else
obviously,
was
we
there?
talked about your par a little bit, and I was actually a bit
Mhm,
surprised by that because some people
mhm.
have reported to me that they find that tenuous do a little better under a bit lower par than, say, a milli or something like that. But it sounds like you got them blasted under 800 to 1,000 par for some of them.
Yeah, like because I'm looking at the corner where it's about I'd say 8 inches under the water.
Mhm.
I lowered my radions because my radions used to. I'm just gonna show you real quick. We could include this or not.
Sure.
So you see the radions. Some of them are hanging with zip ties under the light rack.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
Yeah.
So when I first set this up, I had a light rack and all the radions are just mounted on top of it. But I started to play around with it, and when I lowered it by that 3 inches or so of just airspace, it made things so much brighter. So, and the corals look happier when I did it. So, I mean, and where I have low par, I think it's because my nutrient's too high. It doesn't do so well. So I think it's a different tank. Maybe that the other person's tank, the nutrient's very low. Then it probably does better with the lower par.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would make sense. But yeah, no, it just sort of sounds like it's like you have really good randomized flow. You're kind
Mhm.
of running a little higher phosphate. You've got halides and radions that are pretty cranked and just like, obviously pest free. Um, I don't really know what else, I mean, other
I think
than,
that's a huge thing. I think a lot of tanks have white bugs.
yeah,
That's why I
that's a
stopped
good
buying
point.
corals to people. Like no
Yeah.
matter who, I there were times where, oh yeah, this person's like I should be able to trust their water. I don't buy stuff pretty often, but I'm not gonna blame anybody. And you have to quarantine your stuff.
Yeah.
But I had to treat my tank for white bugs many times. Like I've bought so much interceptor in my life that
Yeah.
I'm like I'm not gonna add anything to my tank anymore. And then, so I think white bugs affects a lot of tanks, and people don't. It's hard to see.
Yeah. Yeah. You can see
It
them better with like a light at night. They
Yeah,
seem
that's
to
what
be a
I
little
do.
more active.
Basically, I put a flashlight to I basically am here almost every night with a flashlight in the tank just to check out how things are doing. But yeah, I think not having white bugs brings out like the corals so much better. When I first bought my Sunday driver in 2020, it's like it did nothing for a year. I just couldn't figure out why. It was
Yeah.
alive. It grew a little bit, but then I finally like, oh wow, there are these little bugs crawling around it.
Yeah.
And then ever since I treated it, and it's a fast grower once it's happy and it's at a decent size.
Yeah.
When it's small, yeah.
Do the white bugs go on other species or mostly just tenuous?
Yeah, I do feel like they're definitely target the tenuous.
Yeah.
I don't know if the coral lights are bigger or I don't, but I mostly notice them on tenuises.
Yeah. That makes
But,
sense. I mean,
yeah,
even acropore-eating flatworms kind of have a preference to certain species
yeah,
sometimes, they just love this certain type, but not so much the
yeah.
others. So, yeah,
Yeah.
probably
And
tastes better.
I think just stability overall, like, because my tank is pretty big. So having gotten down, whatever system you do, as long as you keep it consistent. And when I say consistent, is not just like alkalinity. Because when I ask customers something, I'm like, oh, what's your water parameter? Like 80% will just tell me their alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, which
Mhm.
I almost, if you're keeping acros, you almost have to assume those are in a good range. It doesn't have to be a
Yeah.
specific number. It doesn't have to be 7 or 9, or as long as you keep it within a range and it's consistent. And I just really think it's just knowing your water. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I rarely even ask anybody on the podcast anymore their main basic
Right,
parameters, but I'll say, is there anything you do differently for those
right,
parameters
right.
that you have observed, maybe positive results from a higher alkalinity range or anything? Yeah. I mean, would you say there's anything in particular that's outside of this standard range?
I mean, for a while, my calcium was running really high, and I didn't really think much of it. But I did some research and I realized, hey, over 500 calcium is not great for your.
Hmm.
I forgot the details now, but basically, then I lowered my calcium level. You kind of want to keep your calcium at a non-elevated level. So I
Yeah.
don't know why cal. So okay, back to the chemistry stuff. So most of my top off is through Kalkwasser. So that's my main
Yeah.
alkalinity replenishment. I do run a calcium reactor, but it's just barely on, just to dissolve some mag flakes and other stuff in there, but
Yeah.
mainly Kalkwasser. So my pH runs relatively high.
Okay. So yeah, because I was going to ask about your major element
Mhm, mhm,
supply. So
mhm.
it's mostly calc on all the systems. Hey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I run a calc stir, so one of those a vast marine stirs,
Yeah.
and then I was running all of my top off through it. But recently decided I need to make it more precise because in the summer I'm probably evaporating an extra 30% of water. So I
Yeah.
was getting actually pretty dramatic alkalinity swings.
Yeah.
And would be like, "What are you doing? You can't do that." So I finally put my calcster on the dosing pump. I did the Versa because it pumps because I just top off like 6 gallons a day.
Yeah.
Some of those dosing pumps weren't like really able to pump that much
Yeah.
water.
They don't love the calc either, right?
Oh,
Like,
right,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, so for me, I think it's the Kalkwasser is the super high intense light, and some people tell me, oh, it's because you use halogens. Of course, maybe I'm not sure. And then the random flow, I mean, I've got pretty good flow across all of my tank because that Hydro Wizard can blow across the tank, from one end to the other if I turn it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a pretty strong pump. So, there's movement everywhere. Just
Yeah.
not, yeah. So I think those four, if you just get those four right, I think that's to me, and, to a certain extent, the feeding. I feel like feeding the Benepets and the ProBio, I mean, I think that has really helped my
Yeah.
corals just get nutrients or whatever it is that they need to grow
Yeah. And as far as the calc, how long have you been in on calc as your primary?
forever. Like
Yeah.
I've always used cow, even like 15 years ago.
Oh, crazy. Yeah, because
Yeah.
there's been a lot of talk about how calc may potentially hit a point in a system where it starts to cause problems, or it only kind of it loses its ability to kind of buffer the way that it maybe did at
Hmm.
one point as the tank
Oh,
matures
really?
and changes. But I mean, you're kind of showing some proof that it's been really good for you long
Yeah.
term.
This
You know,
tank is about like 6 years old now. So this tank has
yeah,
been cow ever since I set it up.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I use two part if I need to adjust you know, if my calcium was too high, then I was only dosing the part one of the two part just to get the ratio back to a better level. But
yeah,
I've never really used two part.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
that's nice because two part can get expensive, especially if you're using ESV or something like
yeah,
that,
yeah. So yeah,
and
I do have
especially
some
in a big
ESV
system.
buckets. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's all about kind of, on a big scale level like you have. Well, I guess you wouldn't say it's huge compared to, say, a wholesaler or something, but you're still
Mhm.
trying to just find the most efficient way to grow things. And, like it's got to be economical because, like,
It's
yeah,
interesting, like, because I see, I envision myself if I had a bigger warehouse and I have like 10 systems the size of this. It's challenging to get a really productive system growing really well. Like it
mhm,
really, you know, you could have 10 systems and they're all barely keeping your coral alive and you're not producing anything. Because I've got these wholesalers that buy from me because I'm consistently producing every month. They could come to me every month, be like, I need 100 frags. And usually I could fill the order. So for me, having this one system that you kind of spend all your time and, kind of baby, at least for me, to grow coral, this has been, if I had to take care of 10 systems, all 10 probably wouldn't be doing that
yeah.
well.
Well, and also, like you were saying, like you could take the same methods that you applied to this big system and try to
Hmm.
recreate it, and it may just not work.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
can't guarantee every time that you can replicate your success on one system.
That's for sure. Yeah. I don't know if, because I've got a lot of sand in this tank. There's probably so much detritus built up in there.
Mhm.
For a while, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna try to lower my phosphate. Let's vacuum some sand. So I did that for a while. I didn't really notice too big of a difference. I'm like, you know what? I'll just, Kenny at Hodo has like inches of
Yeah.
detritus. I'll just,
I saw the vid.
I'll leave my detritus in my system.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be something to that with the sand too, where there's, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of held up in there, and how
Uh-huh.
much does it leach out? I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
like, does your sand stay pretty unstirred for the most part? Like, it stays
I,
pretty,
I do have one fish that likes to dig, but he
yeah,
only dig one little section at a time. So if
yeah,
he stirs up some stuff, it's not that bad.
yeah, yeah. But maybe something to ask about is like, what are some of your approaches to struggling corals or kind of assessing issues with the coral? Like, I know you said you had done Cipro on the system before, which is
Mhm.
nobody really likes to do something like that, and it should
Mhm.
definitely be, considered very carefully if somebody
Yeah.
decides to. But is there anything you've kind of found where you've been able to turn a coral around, say SPS or LPS?
So I think all of my SPS issues in the past 3 years, when they don't look good, has always been because of white bugs. Every
Yeah.
single unhealthy coral, after a while, I finally see, oh, it's got white bugs in it. Um, So that's one thing where I just getting rid of the white bugs via interceptor. The
Hmm.
Cipro, I've only really used those mainly because I wanted to get torches or like a bunch of torches in the tank are not healthy. So
Yeah.
for a while, I was like doing like a third torches and mostly SPS. So the Cipro mostly were for kind of the beet brown jelly disease and
Yeah.
stuff like that. I don't,
Yeah.
for me, I didn't really find if Cipro really did much for SPS. Is there much that people use
Well,
for
yeah,
SPS?
I mean, I did a Cipro treatment because I had tried
Okay.
quite a few things for a specific issue with a few different species that would sort of get this dark kind of tissue spreading through them.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
yeah, there's a pic on my Instagram of kind of a before and after, and it's pretty major. Like the
Oh,
difference of
really?
like vivid confetti
Interesting.
pre-Cipro. But since I did the Cipro, I don't know, it was like sometime later last year, it has not come back on my confetti. Looks
So
perfect
was
now.
it just that you dipped it or you dipped that particular
No, it
color?
was a full treatment to the system.
Oh, oh, to the
Yeah.
whole system.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, I'm not proud of it that I did that, but
Uh-huh.
there's certain things in this hobby that we just don't really have a really good grasp on. And I think,
Mhm.
the biome of the system, obviously the aquabiomics is kind of getting better and better, and that may give us some
Are they
indications.
doing
But
better? I did
yeah,
a
I
couple
mean,
of tests
yeah,
before. I was like, I'm not sure how to interpret this. It's so complicated in terms of
yeah,
so
that's
many
the
different.
problem.
Yeah,
Y-
I still have
Yeah,
some tests. I bought like 6 tests, so maybe I'll send another one.
yeah,
See how
yeah.
things
And
are
they do
going.
swabs too, so you can swab the tissue of
Oh yeah,
coral
yeah.
that's kind of maybe
Oh,
darkening or
okay.
whatever. But
Interesting. I
yeah.
did have another one where um, I've had a few pieces that had the boring worm, the sphenoidal worm. Is that how you
Mm,
say it?
yeah.
The one that has like two antennas.
Yeah.
So I've tried a bunch of different things to try to treat it. Some people said, "Oh, I did like a 10x interceptor." They kill. So for me, I finally, I mean, through Usaholics. You know, one of the guys on Reef Moonshine, so he did ivermectin treatment on it. So I
Hmm.
think it's like
Oh
one
yeah.
percent ivermectin to, I think it's probably like one 1 ml to 2 liters of water dipped for an hour. So that I finally that's been a godsend there are some mother columns out that I see this on, and I would try to cut off the base, but it just that doesn't get rid of them. So this treatment has definitely been super helpful to get rid of those things.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I know ivermectin had that whole thing with COVID, and it was all like, I'd feel embarrassed trying to get some of that and be like, are you into this conspiracy?
I bought it from like a veterinarian supply store,
Yeah.
just like an online thing. They
Yeah.
shipped it. But yeah, I think at some point you might get a frag that is just has that worm, and it's generally pretty innocuous until it bores a bunch of holes in your
Mm,
SPS, and it really stunts that coral. So if you ever
okay.
notice any antennas, I think you need to
Hmm.
have some ivermectin in case you ever get that from especially when you buy bigger pieces from other people. Usually frags will be safe because they're just cut from the tip. There won't be worms in it, but
Yeah.
the bigger pieces sometimes might have
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Especially like maricultured or wild pieces.
Yeah,
Definitely a thing to keep an eye
yeah,
out for. Yeah.
yeah.
But
As far as like RTN wise, like I've always struggled with that when if there have been times where I noticed when either my tank wasn't healthy or just like there's some kind of bacteria in the water where it goes, it RTNs one colony and then it moves on to the next. And I'm one of those guys that kind of just keep to myself, which is why a lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm surprised I've never heard of you," but I'm kind of keep to
hmm.
myself. So
Hmm.
you mentioned, and then I don't really know what to do with that. I mean, I've heard some people do various like treatments in their tank, and I'm kind of just scared to try anything. The most I do is okay. I'm gonna dose some biodigest, dose some good bacteria.
Yeah.
Hopefully that calms the tank down, and then this like streak of one colony after another. And it doesn't happen often, but when it does, I'm just like I'm not sure what to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sad.
Sometimes you're better off just letting it play out,
Yeah.
and hopefully you can improve the system in other ways. But yeah, adding some good strains of bacteria every once in a while is probably not going to harm anything, just to kind of top up some of those populations, right?
Yeah, like my sexy core orange passion, which is in your picture,
Hmm.
it grew so well for me for a long time where it grew into colony. And then like one all of a sudden it started to like lose its tissue. I couldn't figure out why.
Yeah.
Do you keep that coral pretty well?
I've had the same problem with it where I've had it, grown a nice big colony, very sustainable. Took me a couple years, and then,
It looks
it
nice.
just yeah, and it'll look fantastic as it's peeling. It's not
I
like it.
literally okay,
Yeah.
so 3 years ago that happened to me. So I had a halide bulb uh just shatter in my frag tank. I'm not
Oh,
sure if
geez.
something from the stuff got into the tank, but all of my home records, of which I had like 30 that's what I do. I keep a bunch of mini colonies to
Yeah.
frag from, but I had like 20, 30 home record colonies. Then the skin just peeled off of them as the polyps were extending.
Yeah. Yeah. That's brutal.
Did you ever look into that kind of stuff? Like what's
I
going on?
mean, I know someone's doing some research on it, and there could be something to do with I wouldn't really be able to explain it quite yet, but there's something to do with the layer of tissue and the acid regulation in the coral's tissue,
Okay.
and that's kind of keeps the healthier barrier between the tissue and the skeleton.
Uh-huh.
That's to me seems like what it would explain how a healthy looking acro could just lose all its tissue while the other polyps are still out.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
because I think of you're talking to so many people. I'm excited to see all the knowledge you gather, and then I'm gonna come to you and be like, okay, this is happening. You're the encyclopedia.
yeah, no, I mean, hopefully we're able to explain things. I mean, I'm a person that, I'm not on the research side of things, so I try to be careful how I
Right,
present
right.
facts out there when I talk about things I've taken in. But it's all a bit of telephone game, you know.
Yeah, no, and
So
that'll be
yeah,
exciting. Like, because you're encountered a bunch of different people.
yeah,
I was kind of reluctant to come on because I feel like I'm just like I've tried things and then some things work and I just keep doing it.
hmm,
I kind of I feel like what I do is pretty simplistic because there are some people out there that are super technical that I'm just like, oh, they have a lot to share. For me, I'm just like, hey, these are the things I do. I keep it simple. I keep it steady.
Yeah.
And there's not it's like there's not a magic bullet that all of a sudden,
No.
oh, here's the secret. If you do it, everything will be beautiful.
But I mean, we need to hear that as well. We don't
Yeah,
always need the complex ways. Sometimes it's more useful to be reinforced that you can just do this and this and this and this, and you probably should have success.
just give it time.
Yeah.
Because I think some of my customers, they set up a tank 4 months ago. They're like, oh yeah, I've got like 3 acros, and usually they're the easier to keep one. They're like, yeah, they're doing great. I want to order all these. I'm like, maybe you should slow down because tanks take a while to really go through the ebbs and flow the first whatever 6 months
Yeah.
a year, depending on how you set it up. And they're just like, oh, they died, and they're just like very discouraged. But really, I think you need to give it like 12 months, or 18 months before you could determine, hey, did I do a good job or not? It's like it just takes time.
Yeah, don't start adding $400 frags the moment you start to see your green slimer, putting on growth tips. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Is there anything you do for like water clarity? Like, do you run activated carbon or UV? Those things you're using?
I mean, if you see me post pictures of my like side tank shots, because my tank is pretty long, 10 feet.
Yeah.
People be like, why did you just dose AB plus? That's one thing. I do run carbon. I do have 160-watt UV, but my water is very not clear. I don't know if that comes from my algae scrubber, because that's one of the things with algae scrubbers, that they turn your water more yellow. So I'm contemplating is removing my algae scrubbers. I feel like I don't really need it, but my water is very, like, if I put in a white bucket, you could see color in it when I take out like 3 gallons of water.
Interesting. Yeah. Because I guess that's the thing we're seeing on the MS test, the Oceano one.
Yeah, I
got the dock test. Yeah. So what was your dock
today.
number? What was your number?
I've done my first one with the dock included today, so we'll have to edit that in post.
Yeah. Let me know what it is, because
I should get it today. I think usually it comes on a Thursday.
Yeah, nice. Okay, yeah. Let us know. I think we'd be curious.
So, do you know anything about the dock numbers, like what they mean?
No, I actually just reached out to Christoph about having a little chat. I don't know. We could just do a quick little podcast chat about it too. I was going to say we could have a candid convo where we could talk about all the other companies and stuff, but maybe I'll see if we want to just do a little.
No, I've been doing the MS test for a long time, so I really appreciate him and his team. I feel like all the results have been pretty consistent. Like with the stabilizer and just the methodology that they operate, because it takes like you're running your tank for 2 weeks, you send in a test, you really need to be able to rely on what those numbers tell you. Like, how did it change? Like, directionally, did your zinc go from 2 to 5 or 2 to 1? Like, that direction is very important. And so I want to just say thanks to them. Like, I trust their numbers.
Yeah, no, it was a great episode to have them on. So we'll see. Maybe I'll have them back soon and we can talk about the dock stuff, because obviously Salem's article I think had a lot of really good points and things to consider. But it's also funny though, because like you say, your tank is not very clear and you have awesome corals. So
that's what I mean. Like, I've been a little burned out because when I went on my trip in March, I told you I was still doing all my eBay sales. I just told people, hey, I'm out for the next 3 weeks. I'll ship it out when I come back. And when I came back, just like 60 frags, like every shipping day for like 6 to 8 weeks.
Oh.
And I just got pretty tired out from like.
So
the past like month, I've been just like, I know that Salem had come out with an article about the dock, but I haven't read it yet. I just been.
Yeah,
but I feel like I'm getting better. I'll get back on the saddle soon. I've been just kind of keeping the system running. I'm just like watching the corals and feeding. I've been experimenting with feeding the PNS bacteria multiple times a day, but at lower doses.
Yeah.
Like, before I would dose like a big, because the instructions actually tell you 2 doses a week. So I was dosing every day just because I want them to have a little exposure every day. Lately, I cut that dose into like 2 to 5 a day, depending on how often I get to my tank. I literally pour the bacteria onto the coral. Even I think the solution is actually fresh water. So I dilute it with salt water and I pour it onto the polyps. So it's almost like direct feeding it, but not it's just
Yeah.
the whole thing, the whole
Well, it's
area.
maybe giving it more of a chance to kind of get onto the actual coral's
Yeah,
tissue and help the microbiome of the coral too. Maybe,
yeah,
that could be
yeah,
part of it.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think we said, but what salt brand are you using, and have you
So
been
for the
through a couple?
longest time, I always use Reef Crystal just because it's easiest to order on Amazon.
Mhm.
It's a pretty good price, especially when we did like subscribe and save. But I
Mhm.
think it was like a year ago, maybe it was 2 years ago when prices went up like crazy. So I stopped using that. And I went on moonshine, so I stopped using salt altogether. Lately, I've been just buying the Red Sea Blue Bucket.
Yeah.
It's like you know, from what I understand, it's a pretty good salt. The alkalinity is not too high, and my supplier has it, so that's
Yeah.
what I use.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a great salt for the price and obviously
yeah,
like accessible, easy to get. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And also it's better to support a supplier like that than Amazon anyways. I mean, we all
Yeah,
love Amazon, but
yeah. It was more just like for simplicity, because when you have bigger systems, it's a lot of salt to lug. It's like
Mhm.
changing 100 gallons of salt a week. That was a lot of salt to buy all the time.
Yeah.
So having it shipped to me was helpful.
Yeah, yeah, totally makes it easy. You're talking about coral acquisition and
Mhm.
how you're basically all aquaculture only corals. Like, so do you ever bring in any kind of wild corals or like because you said you had some speciosa a while back,
Yeah,
obviously.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
So I initially bought the Speciosas in 2020 from Rafa, BK Kim, when he brought some
Hmm.
in like in
Yeah.
2019. I was like, man, these are so nice. Like the polyps when they're happy,
Yeah.
they're just so amazing. So I was like on the Speciosa fever. So Kung Fu Coral was importing some back. I feel like this is a year and a half ago now because I bought a bunch. I remember in December.
Yeah.
So I was like, I really want to aquaculture these. I didn't. My plan was for me. I always want to make sure my stuff are growing before I do any
Totally.
selling kind of
Yeah.
thing. And then first, they mostly died. A lot of them died for whatever
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
And the ones that did survive, they would look great for a while, and then for a while they would all of a sudden not look good.
Yeah.
So the extent of me bringing new corals just through that, and he also has some Malaysian tenuas, which
Yeah.
I have some now. But maybe just my tank, but they don't grow. Like it's the colony, it's about the same. I've had it for a year. I don't really. Have you tried Malaysian tenuous?
Yeah, the Malaysian tenuis I brought in actually did quite well, especially like the
Okay,
yellow green kind of varieties. They're pretty
okay.
hardy.
Did
I
they
think
grow well for you?
like let's see, I've had them since earlier this year.
Uh,
That variety is growing well. I mean, if you
okay,
frag it you see it heal over fast and then you see new growth tips come out.
okay.
So yeah, they seem to be good, but I don't think it's, not every coral from Malaysia is going to do as well as say, I
It's
mean,
just
it
weird
seems
to
like our
me.
tanks are more geared towards Indo corals for
Yeah,
the
I don't
most
get.
part.
Yeah, I went to Malaysia last year. I thought about bringing an ICP test kit with me to
Mm,
sample some water and bring it home, but I didn't end up doing that. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, so for me, like, I view my tank as far as the business side as like, okay, it's a business. Each specimen I keep, I need to. Oh, sorry about that. I need to understand like home record. It's been around forever. It's a nice coral that every tank, everybody should have. And I'll grow that. Whereas if it's a wild piece, I don't know what it is. I don't know the color, and I don't have much space. So in the past, I tried a few wild pieces. Maybe like 3 years ago, I decided, hey, I'm not gonna. There are a lot of great people doing that already. They do a much better job than I do. I'll leave that up to them.
yeah, yeah, and then
I,
just buy the exact ones you want from them and then just
exactly.
put it somewhere and wait.
Yeah, like Angry Bird, I bought that about 2 years ago. So I bought two big frags. I spent like 2 grand on each frag just because I'm like, I don't, frags are expensive. Like they were like 3/4 inch for like $500 or something. But I'm
Yeah,
like, I need a bigger piece. So if I wanted to grow, a three
yeah,
quarter inch will take 6 months just to encrust and maybe start
yeah, it's
growing.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So from that, I mean, I probably fragged, I would guess like 800 frags from those two frags in the 2 years time that I've had it.
Holy, that's insane.
Yeah. I mean, I'll shoot you a picture of it later. But I mean, the mother colony is probably like this big now too, and it produces something like I could probably do like 20 frags with every month, And I have
Wow.
like 10 other mini colonies that I've made from the mother that just, I'm like basically saturating the world with,
Yeah.
which I am very happy to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes people will tell me like, oh, you're killing the market. I'm like, I mean, I feel like these are corals that everybody should have. It shouldn't cost
Yeah.
$800.
Yeah.
Like maybe $100, $200. Because
Yeah.
people don't have so much money to buy like 20 different acros for $300. That's a lot of money. But if it's
Yeah.
like $100, then we could all have nice acro tanks.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you probably agree, like, even if we got no more corals from the wild ever again, like, we have enough nice stuff in the hobby for
Yeah.
anybody to have an amazing reef tank with all kinds of different colors and varieties and stuff, you
Yeah,
know?
I totally agree. Because I feel like, I mean, I've sent out so many corals to people. I mean, I'm not that well known, but just by my selling, people have bought from me. They appreciate like my following up or my taking care of it when things go wrong.
Yeah,
Because I feel like that's super important. Like I
totally.
think if somebody buys something from me, they gave you money, they need to get the product that they paid, no matter what happens in between. Everything that happens in between is our responsibility, right? They just
Yeah.
paid money for something. It's got to get to them. I
Yeah.
think people appreciate that because there are some people in the here where they charge people and they don't send it or there's I read a lot of like bad experiences. So that I want to make this a good experience for everybody. And I'm lucky that my corals are growing. So it's been really fulfilling to be able to like share all these corals.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool to think. It's a funny way to think of an animal being successful in you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
it's kind of like how we have our agriculture and you know, the things that we grow for food. It's like that's not really the natural way of them, but it's a way of that animal succeeding in its
Yeah.
replication, you know?
Because yeah, one of the biggest success stories I feel like is the Vivid Insanity. I don't know
Yeah,
if you know the story, but basically I
yeah.
bought it from Vid in 2017.
Mhm.
And I'm not 100% sure, but I mean their colony died, and it was a somewhat sensitive coral. So from what I heard, most other frags that were sold all died, and I got like a half-inch frag.
Mhm.
And then from that, I literally made I would say about 5,000 to 10,000 frags of Vivid Insanity that I've sent
What?
around the world. Like photos, Vivid Insanities all came from me.
Yeah.
Like I've sent Vivid Insanities every like colonies. Like I probably have grown 500 5-inch colonies,
Wow.
like from a half-inch frag
That
since
is literally
2017.
insanity. And it's an expensive coral too. And I
I
think,
made it super cheap now. I made it
yeah.
super cheap now. I
Well,
paid $1,200 for that tiny little piece.
wow.
Because I think that was the only one that was ever imported.
Hmm.
I mean, I
Yeah,
think
because
they
it's
recently had a striata that
striata.
made.
Yeah, it's a
I think
different.
it might be different. It's similar, like I think similar species.
Yeah,
But since the original Vivid Insanity, there hasn't been another one. I don't think.
yeah, yeah. It's almost like it looks a little bit like a cross between like tenuous and echinata or something. You know,
Oh
it's like
yeah,
a
because
little
of the
wider.
thin branch. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, thinner
That's cool.
branch.
Yeah, well, I'll get some pics up on this chat over here
Yeah, so,
in the background.
so I kind of like people know me as the guy who like either I kept insanity in the hobby and now I've kind of flooded the hobby with sanity. Anybody who wants one can get one because I mean I
Yeah,
yeah, so it's great. I as I look back on this, as I'm getting older, but 10, 20 years from now, I'll feel like I've made a difference in a few of the pieces in this hobby. Because when I was trying to buy an Angry Bird, it was so hard to get one. It's like nobody
yeah,
wanted to sell it, or people didn't really have it, you know. So now it's like if you want one, you could get one, kind
yeah,
of thing.
yeah. Oh, it's crazy, man. I can't believe the volume you're able to turn out. And, you know, if anybody's being critical of calc, you know, maybe just
Yeah,
look at your
this
system
tank
for a sec.
produces 600 to 1,000 frags a month.
Oops. Yeah,
Did you
crazy.
hear that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, um, the right now, because it's so hot, I don't really want to ship. I've been trying to not frag anything, just to let the tank grow for. Because I see Joseph, like Coralina Coral Heads, because he always posts like his tank picture. The
Yeah.
colonies are all huge.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a bunch of little colonies, but to me, those, it just needs to get to a certain size, and it's
Yeah.
less risk for me. For sometimes when huge colony, if it starts to get unhappy, it's gone. So I like to
Yeah.
keep like 3, 4, 5 inch colonies.
Yeah, yeah. And you obviously like besides the system behind you, your other bigger system has I'm sure you've got split up backups between
Yeah, there
all
are
of them.
backups
Yeah.
there. But this display is like the workhorse that
Yeah.
produces everything. Whatever I need for X to look really nice. So for shows or for, because I've got a couple guys who are like, they basically buy in wholesale and I want to make sure they get really healthy corns. And I leave it in here to heal, even just like 3, 4 days. And especially if they're local, they pick it up.
Yeah.
It's perfectly fine. Shipping,
Yeah.
sometimes it's better to let them heal a little
Yeah,
longer.
that's another thing. Actually, we talked about this before we started, but I was talking about packing with oxygen. I've actually found since packing with oxygen, there's been a couple orders would have been like, I just cut this last night. Like, I can ship it tomorrow if you need it right away.
Uh-huh.
Like somebody's
Right.
going away on a trip and they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever, let's just do it anyways. If you pack with the pure oxygen, it doesn't seem to bother. Doesn't matter.
Wow.
The
I'm
coral
definitely
was
gonna
just
try that.
cut. Yeah,
Yeah.
and a little
Yeah.
carbon. Yeah,
Yeah, because
totally.
when because before I didn't have an oxygen bottle, but you know, like a year and a half ago, I shipped some like mini colonies, and if you ship a mini colony without oxygen, it's much more difficult for them to survive,
Yeah,
even if it's on time. So I finally broke down and got like a huge oxygen bottle.
yeah.
So it's all, so I definitely should just make use of them. And,
Yeah,
yeah,
it makes a huge difference. It's
yeah,
to me it's like the the shipping, the people that really have shipping figured out are probably all using oxy in
yeah,
pure oxygen. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well why don't we go to the let's end on the rapid fire questions, which
Sure.
tend to never be all that rapid, but it also just leads down a new path to talk about different stuff. So first one is favorite fish, and you can give me two. Give me your favorite fish for aesthetic or personality reasons, and then for utility purpose.
Um, for aesthetics, I think my favorite fish would be the powder blue,
Yeah,
but I also hate that fish because that and the Achilles are always super aggressive towards each
yeah,
other. They just like they'll kill each other. I mean, so this tank used to have 3 powder blues and 3 Achilles. So now I still have one powder blue left. I saved one and one got killed. What the one I saved in his own tank by himself. The 3 Achilles, two remains, the hybrid and a regular. So there's three of those Acantharus. Is that how you say it?
I think that's right. Yeah, but I can't believe
Acanthurus.
you had four in the same tank of each of
There's
those.
six Acantharus in the tank.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because they're when they fight, they're so aggressive. They'll like
Mhm.
slice the stomach open.
Yeah.
Um,
Brutal.
but yeah, because to me, when they're ick free and the blue is just like it's
Yeah.
so majestic, and
Yeah.
it doesn't
Beautiful.
grow fast. And
Yeah.
some fish, when they grow too fast, like my flamingi, I had it like as a 1 incher, and now it's like over a foot long, and I feel like my tank is gonna be too small for him soon.
Yeah. And they hit that
Yeah.
angry puberty phase. They start to get aggro.
Yeah, yeah. Utility wise, I love the fox face because they just eat so much algae.
Yeah.
They'll eat like you know, the bubble algae too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that, but I had one in here, but the fish, I think all the Canthorus fish got angry at it. And because one day I
Mm.
just noticed it like swimming weird and I had to like
Mm.
just put it to sleep. But I'm scared to add new fish, even the quarantine fish. I never, the fish disease is one of those, I have a good fish population still.
Yeah.
I don't want to risk having to
Yeah. No, it sounds like you
mess
don't
it.
want to mess with it. And if they're
Yeah,
doing enough maintenance as far as
yeah,
keeping the macro algae down, then you're
yeah, yeah,
probably
yeah.
good, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because I've got like 5 yellow tames. Like, I used to have 3 black tames, but
Mm.
one of them I think got killed off, and I didn't even notice. But I've got a lot of tames in there. I've got
Yeah.
like this Red Sea Selfin tames, a lot of algae eaters.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're all good utility, but I agree. Fox face is a really good one. Okay. If you could pick one, could you pick a favorite SPS?
I mean,
Either.
right now my favorite is the Panty Snatcher, just because
Okay.
it does grow. The polyps are just insane when they are extended. They come out like I, I mean, it's almost like speciosa polyps. This is not quite okay. The polyps, as the colony grows bigger, is different color polyps. Not that it's rainbow. So the ones at the tip are redder. The ones at the
Okay.
bottom are yellow. I haven't seen a full colony yet because A nod had one, but he has died from the salt issue,
Yeah.
and nobody else. I mean, there's a few people that have the coral. So that's like the coral I'm working hardest to get it to grow. That's the coral I'm feeding every day to try to give it a little more bacteria to grow a little faster.
Nice.
So
Yeah,
that's
that's
my
cool.
project for 2025. 2025, I'm hoarding it until then, and 2025, I'm gonna start sending out to people.
Nice. Yeah, people will be snatching those panties.
Yeah, because I mean,
Yeah.
Michael Salcido is the one who brought it in initially.
Mhm.
He doesn't have either. I hope I could get him one too one of
Yeah.
these days. Yeah.
Yeah. Get him one back. Nice.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
but I can't. I know we only said one, but like
You
Purple
can have a
Monster
runner
is one
up.
of my favorite. Yeah, like Purple Monster, just because
Yeah.
it's one of the like the corals that I love the most is things that I mean. I heard recently they found more. They're importing
Yeah.
it, but I feel like it's been in the hobby so long. It may look a little different now, or it may have changed a little bit.
Yeah.
But
And bluer tanks generally too. Like it would have popped more in a 10K tank,
yeah, so
you
I mean,
know.
I've got a decent sized Purple Monster that I've been growing forever, and
Nice.
it's producing like I'm able to cut maybe like two frags a month or something like that.
Yeah. That's
So,
good.
'cause it's not easy to find. So I'm hoping to get it into the right hands of
Mhm.
people that could grow it, so it doesn't go extinct. Because I feel
Yeah.
like every once in a while you're like, oh, I had a colony, but it died on me.
Yeah, I had a
Even like
colony. I had a colony maybe like 10 years ago, and
uh,
I grew it to a decent size, and it actually had hit a bit of a, stage where it was like maybe going to be a sustainable, fraggable colony.
uh,
And one day it just was white.
but you don't have
That
it
was it.
now anymore.
No, no, this was a
Oh,
long time ago. I don't
yeah,
know of anybody in Canada that has it anymore.
we'll have to get you one when we
Yeah.
get that whole shipping thing done.
Oh, that'd
Hopefully,
be
we could do
sweet.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's
totally.
that's what I do. I'm like trying to keep all the corals that are either hard to find or they're just like there are times where I've gotten rid of a lot of acros, stuff that grows too fast
Yeah.
and that aren't really worth shipping because some corals are only worth like 10, $20 or
Mhm.
like the pink Cadillac Buchanan
Yeah.
is worthless because it
I
grows
call
so
them
fast.
porch corals because they're better off just take them out of the tank and put them on the porch.
Exactly. So I have to get rid of those. So I'm always changing like, I keep it in my frag tank to try to, make sure it's pest free. Slowly move it into my display because I'm hoping to keep all the corals. Like I'm trying to figure out how to keep the sexy core orange passion again.
Mhm.
Because that I was growing it really well and it just died. I don't know if I did something wrong but I feel like that has happened to a lot of people for that specific
Yeah.
coral.
Yeah. For in
So,
Canada, we have Reef Canada Orange Passion, but it's the same
right.
coral.
So
Like that's what's in
oh,
my
it's the
pick.
same. It looks the
Yeah.
same.
It's
Okay,
exactly the same. Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
And the other reason that we don't see a lot of that one is that it's not a mariculture piece. Like the farms don't have it. So,
Yeah, yeah. That's the type that I like.
yeah.
Anything that is
Yeah.
like mariculture, I'm like.
Oh, it's
Somebody
so
else can do this
massively
better than I do. Yeah.
massively replicated. But I really like that you're really like a good coral bank because we need people to do a really good job at keeping,
Yeah.
a lot of this really classic good stuff. And you're
Yeah.
doing such a good job of that. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question. Let's move on here.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
say, they're not always very rapid. Favorite LPS. You can say species or a morph or whatever.
Um, I mean, I do keep torches, but I think Bower Banky is some of my favorites because they
Mm.
don't grow fast. The theme of what I like are things because when things grow too fast, they just become too common and like, and they
Yeah.
also some of the Bower Bankies have incredible colors. So I think yeah, I don't even know what they're called because I never sell them because they don't grow fast enough to even sell.
Yeah.
But I like having them just because they look super
Yeah.
cool.
Some of them almost look painted. The colors are
Yeah,
so
yeah.
opposite. Totally.
But
Yeah.
there because I do keep some eight cans where I traded with a guy who has a huge collection and I posted a picture. People, oh, are how much you want to sell that? I'm like, you know, I just pretty much sell SPS. This stuff, I'm hoping to just keep and let it grow and be like a normal coral person because my SPS tank, everything is, where I can make frags is getting cut.
Yeah. Hey, you got to, sometimes get high on your own supply, you
Yeah.
know, as you might say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that too. And
Yeah.
I've got a few corals that don't make sense to be in my frag systems, but it's like I want a nice big elegance coral. Like that's a cool coral, people come over and they're like, "Holy crap, what is that thing?" Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Okay, favorite softie.
I would have to go back to when I first started keeping corals, which we never touched on that much, but
Mm,
I started keeping corals because my brother in the 90s, because I moved to the US from Taiwan in like early 90s. So he was into coral, like fish tanks in general, and we had a 150-gallon reef tank. It was running on like VHOs. I think some power compacts. I had like the Aqua Sea, Beckett skimmer. I mean, we didn't really keep things alive very well because back then it was kind of, but we had the Tyree neon green leather, you know. I think wasn't really imported often, but we had it back then. And I like what I do now, I propagated the crap out of that thing. So I was like in college in the early 2000s, I would sell down on eBay like all the time. So I'd say that has to be our favorite. So
Oh
it's
yeah,
like,
it's got sentimental, yeah,
yeah,
purpose and nice coral too. Yeah,
yeah.
cool. This next question, so favorite light, say product or source, like if you were to just kind of have one thing you could use for a whole system.
Yes, I would have to. I mean, obviously it'll need to be driven by some kind of balance, but I mean, I just recently bought 70 radium bulbs because
Hmm.
uh the guy at Hamilton finally, because it was gone for a while.
Yeah.
He worked with a factory and started to bring some in. I don't know for how long, if it's gonna be permanent, but
Hmm.
I'm just like, in case it's not, I'm gonna buy enough for the next 10 years. Because I use 3 quarter watts per year. So I
Hmm.
bought 30 of those and I bought 40 250 watt for the next
Well,
10 years of bulb supply.
wild. Okay, so yeah, if you just had one light, you would say
I
400,
just use
yeah,
the radium.
radium halides.
I feel like it's got the full spectrum that
Mhm.
benefits, poles in ways that I don't really know, but I feel like they do well under that light.
Yeah, you got me tempted to just like trying a section on one of my systems where I put just one over it and just see put some
You
of the
should,
same
just because,
corals. Yeah.
yeah, I want to see how, if because my tank is uniform throughout, or at least there's not a section with only LED versus not.
Hmm.
You could kind of experiment with that.
Well, it makes me curious too. Is it just going to be coloration and growth, or is it going to be actual like health, like just general
Mhm.
health maybe is better under
Right,
that spectrum? Because maybe
right,
this flicker of LED lights is like kind of annoying to corals,
right.
like
Yeah,
just
yeah.
subtly annoying, but
And
not,
I'm sure I do believe LEDs grow coral fine. It's just like the difference. Like that
Mhm.
question is very hard to answer because it takes a long time for corals to adapt to the environment and to evaluate growth and color. It takes months or maybe even a year or two before you can make a conclusion. And I don't
Yeah.
think anybody really has devoted that, okay, hey, I'm going to set up a few things for the next 2 years, observe the differences.
Yeah, you got to give it time, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Okay, favorite product line for reef chemistry, if you kind of had to use one product line as your primary.
I mean, like, I feel like what Reef Moonshine to me is a product line, and what Andre has done for just his, like, he's very dedicated to his work, just like answering questions,
He's
you know,
great for that. And I'm
yeah.
amazed at some of the
I don't know
responses
how he
he's
has
given.
time to answer so many people because I'm sure his business has blown up.
Yeah.
Where it's like at some point it's like, hey, I already put all the data out there. Just go read the handbook. You know, I've already done a lot for the hobby. That's my opinion. Just go read it. But he'll answer people directly. And it's like,
Yeah.
and all this stuff, I'm not chemist by in any way. Uh, but it's just I'm very thankful that he and both and Oshiama are here to kind of help us out and
Yeah.
give
Yeah.
us this information.
Yeah, and he's definitely sourcing out really good, supply chemicals for all of these products too.
Yeah,
Because it's like something like iron. They're not every supplement that has iron is there's different ways to do it, right?
right.
So
So I trust what he
yeah,
does. I don't know
yeah,
what he does, and he has this said, you can't. I mean, some people have talked about, I could just make this myself, so much easy, so
mhm,
much cheaper. But I'm one of those where I'm kind of risk adverse when it comes to putting
mhm,
stuff in my tank. If
mhm.
it costs 5x more than making it myself, I'd rather just somebody who knows what they're doing,
Yeah, yeah,
reduce that and eliminate that risk for me.
yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, scientifically measured out very precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I don't think I asked you this, but are you using any controllers, and what would you kind of say is the best kind of aquarium controller?
So, I mean, I've been just using Apex by default just because
Mhm.
I've had it for a long time. I mean, I have people who've had their EV 832 constantly fail. For mine,
Mm,
it's been working okay.
yeah,
I mean,
knock on wood.
I don't like relying on controllers too much. I use them more just to, uh, you know, like for example, my pH probe is even though I calibrate it, I bought new ones. I feel like it never reads the correct value, but I see the
Yeah.
trends.
Yeah.
Instead of it being like 8.5, it'll only read 8.3, but
Yeah.
I just kind of use it for trending. And
Yeah.
I've heard people using their, you know, trident to dose alkalinity, which to me is like, I would
Yeah.
never do
That's
that.
insane. Yeah.
Because I've heard some tanks crash with that. Oh my, it just kept dosing. Like, I would never use. I mean, so all my dosing is either on a steady state or look, if it doses like 200 milliliters per day. Even then, I'm a little nervous because I bought a bunch of dosers for Reef for the moonshine stuff. I've been like reluctant to implement it in case it gets like stuck on.
Yeah.
But I've still
Yeah.
been manually dosing. I rely on the monitors to just show me like okay temperature, you know, and if something goes wrong, I can see it from the data. But
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
it sounds
but
like you're of the school that the best aquarium controller is you.
yes.
You're allowed to answer that.
At the same time, I'm like, hey, my fiance wants to travel. I would like it to be as robust as possible, but not where I don't want to ever be like, oh, my tank crashed, so my controller did X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
That can never happen.
Yeah, you
But
got to have
I've
enough
been,
fail safes for sure.
yeah. So I do a lot of redundancy. So like, heater redundancies, or like anything that will turn something on and off. I try to have a redundancy.
Mm. Yeah, totally, totally.
But I mean, I've heard some good things about hydros. I mean, I use their like gyres, and the interface seems pretty good, but it's a lot of work to change out a whole controller system. So if I
Yeah,
ever set up a new tank, maybe I'll try a different thing because it sounds like I don't know, what people have been saying. Like, there's always people who are frustrated by a product, and they're usually the loudest.
yeah, that's
So
true. That's the internet for you.
yeah,
Yeah, one thing I'll say about the hydro stuff is the wave four, or there's the
uh-huh.
two pump one, but the four pump one. I put a bunch of
Okay,
my gyres on those, and it's freaking awesome for those things.
yeah,
And it's like
yeah,
now you're plugging four pumps into one power supply. Power
yeah,
supply has a battery backup input.
yeah.
It's a great piece of gear for sure.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that speaking of backup, so that's like I feel like for people like that, we depend on their tanks. I find that backups are super important. So I just install like a whole house battery backup. Just
Mhm.
you know, if I'm out of town, a power up because there have been a couple of times where I was out of town and power went out and I had to like beg someone. I'm like, okay, my generator's here.
Yeah.
Try start it. You're it's a nightmare if you're not home and you ask
Yeah.
somebody to try to mess with your wires.
Yeah, it's
It's
like
a lot of wires that you deal
yeah,
with.
I can definitely tell you that not every single one of my things that's plugged in has a label on it, or it's
Exactly.
like hard to track it
Yeah.
down. So
But having
yeah,
a wave four that has its own backup, because you just need a couple of things to work. Some water
yeah,
movement, return pump, heater, depending on where you are, then
yeah,
you can survive these outages, a
totally,
decent amount.
yeah, totally. Yeah. So, what is kind of your favorite flow pump, like for just like main flow? Not
I
saying
mean,
which
for
one.
me, I'm a believer in the C sweeps. So
Yeah.
Tunzi's work well with them, even though Tunzi, I feel like there's a new 6105 because I use that for everything.
Hmm.
I think last year they sold or they offered some big. So I don't know if there's something new. I also use the Tunzi threes, which is like the long one that is just like you know the one that's a levitating magnet. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
I don't think I've seen those. No.
So it's kind of like um it has like a 5-year warranty, and the magnet is huge, and so I blow it across the back along with my hydro wizards. All my pumps are Tunzi's or hydro wizards. I don't have. I guess I have the gyres too. The gyres from I don't know. I don't know. It's like
Yeah, Max Spec gyres probably,
yeah.
or are they a different brand?
I have. I used to have mass spec gyres, and now I have the ones with the hydros with the
Oh yeah, yeah, maybe the
2000 to
ice cap.
4000 ice
Yeah, the ice
caps.
cap.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's
yeah.
cool.
So
Yeah.
I used to use like MPs. They look nice, but when I tried it like 8 years ago, I feel like MP60 like failed on me after like 2 3 years. I'm just
Such an
like,
expensive pump too now,
yeah,
especially now. It's insane.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't have any MP pumps.
Okay. Yeah, I got to look into some of those C sweeps because like I remember C swirls from back in the day, but their C sweeps are kind of the same idea. It's just
Yeah,
like a
same
little
idea.
different.
Just that you throw your pump on it.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. Hmm,
Yeah, so you don't need
replies.
to like because if you put too much flow through your return pump, it's just like wasted energy, right? So
Hmm.
I mean, I've thought about adding more seats with, and I mean, inflation or not, they have become pretty expensive because I bought it. I set this up like 2018. So back then it was like expensive already, but now it's like, so there are times where I invest in like, if I buy like 10 of them, can I get a discount? But he's
It's a
also pretty
lot.
backed up too. Like,
Yeah.
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 But I feel like I would, any display tank, I will always set it up with C6, even if I
Yeah.
use other pumps, just
Yeah.
to randomize the flow a bit.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's something I might take into consideration for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Okay, what is your most despised pest? We kind of touched on the
Right
bed
now, I
bugs.
got that right now. I got Mahanos in
Oh,
my tank.
yeah.
They're not like terrible, but like I tried the Mahano one, but I don't know if I'm using it wrong because supposedly I can't kill it with that. I used to have the Aptasia eating filefish that
Yeah.
ate them, but the one that ate them died, and I think they're hit and miss on eating
Yeah.
Mahanos.
Yeah, I've heard about some, I think maybe it was pyramid butterflies might
Yeah,
eat
yeah.
them.
I bought a Klein butterfly to try
Mhm.
them, but I moved it into a different tank to make sure it's pest free before I put it in my thing, and it died. I mean, I bought it quarantine from one of those quarantine
Yeah.
fish guys. So I haven't. I heard stripies might eat them, but if the
Yeah.
stripie decides to eat your torch, they probably will devour it very fast. But I do
Yeah.
have some torches in here, which I could get rid of, but the torches are happiest in here because the
Hmm.
torches in this tank, like a single head of a CC24K in 6 months grew to like 10 heads. So
Yeah.
this tank is just like growing
They
things super
they
fast.
actually love, I mean, torches get this misconception like they actually love SPS conditions. That's for what
Yeah.
I've found. You probably have
Yes.
like you have them a little lower in the tank, but still they're probably still getting like what,
I
600
measured it. It's
par,
like 800, yes,
800?
800 par at, I mean, they're different levels, but
Yeah.
I would say like at least 500.
Yeah. Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, but like as far as pests that you would say you would wish you could eliminate it, the species from the planet, what would you what would you say?
I mean, because there's some very destructive acropora pests that,
Yeah,
I mean, like white bugs, red bugs are just annoying. They're not
yeah.
going to destroy your system,
And you
but
can do an in-tank treatment that's not
yeah,
super
right.
invasive. Yeah,
Like 10 years ago, I think they're called black bugs, I guess, but they
yeah.
like destroyed an entire colony in like 2 days.
You're talking about the like they're like more of an acroporidian flatworm, but they're like the little black kind of purple ones. Or were
Yeah,
these more of like a copepod?
it looked like a cobalt. I have a
Okay.
video that I took when I had. I'll send it to you
Mm,
later. But you know, back then I treated it with. I took out all my acros and I dipped it in the meat coral 4X dip, which I never use anymore. Back then I
mm,
used it and actually was able to get rid of them because I don't think they're around that often. But when they are, they'll like
mm.
destroy like the whole store if the store gets it or something because
Holy.
they're not careful and taking care of their tank.
Mm,
But I think most pests that we have is just an annoyance these days.
mm.
But for me, the Majanos right now, it's getting to like there's so many. I need to do something about it.
Jeez, yeah, it's a lot of manual. You know what? That's something you could trust an employee with. Just be like, hey, dude, your job is to just pick these
Remove.
all off. At least
Yeah.
they come off easier than an Aptasia. Like they actually kind of pop
Oh,
off
that's
rather than,
true. That's true. Yeah,
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 yeah. They're like an anemone with a foot almost.
yeah, yeah, totally. Okay, let's go to the final, the big question is,
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever visited Polo Reef, but I'm curious if you were to do a setup like that, would you do something like that or something a little different?
I think he is doing an amazing thing, but it's just such a huge resource drain. Like
Mm,
just the amount of manpower it takes to keep that up. Like even if you have money, it's like you need to be willing to spend that kind of money.
yeah. Yeah,
Like
I mean the walkthrough of that space, like going down into the basement and all, like it almost seems overly complicated, but I don't know if that's just
yeah,
necessary, but
right.
it's yeah.
I mean, I know it's a huge system, so, and at some point it becomes a totally different scale.
Hmm.
Even if I had the money, I don't
Yeah.
think I would want to take that big in my house that would require that kind of resources where
Hmm.
I don't know how many work man hours are there each month to keep it at that level. That's a
Yeah.
lot of money I have to
But
continue
it's
to
hard to
spend.
say. I mean, if you had enough money to pay people to do everything and you
Uh-huh.
literally just got to walk by the tank and enjoy it, but then would you enjoy the hobby in the same way? Because, like, obviously, Andrew, he's a hobbyist, like a very passionate hobbyist, and he enjoys the hobby.
Right.
If you were just there to look at it, part of the fun of the hobby, like we're talking about, is the challenge of SPS. It's the
Yeah,
challenge of
yeah,
this,
yeah,
you know what I
yeah,
mean? So
yeah.
if you take away the being a hobbyist part, still nice to look
Um,
at, but
yeah, he's still very. I feel like he's pretty involved. I mean,
he is,
I
yeah.
don't know what he's, but um, yeah. I mean, and they're continually adding new tanks, new different types of
I know.
storage.
Yeah.
Because I talked to Joe Tusi on a regular basis,
Hmm.
and he works hard. I mean, they're like working hard. They're like adding new tanks, and it's just insane. Because I mean, as much as we work on the hobby, like when I think about what they do, it's just like, oh man, that's just a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't
Yeah.
visited. I should though. I delivered corals to him one time,
Hmm.
but I was like, I need to get home. So I just met his one of his employees at the airport.
Oh,
This is before I knew like Southwest Cargo was pretty robust
yeah.
because like the failure rate on a cargo shipment, because it is always live stuff that they're
Yeah. And you know
operating.
which flight it's going on. It's
Yeah,
all
and they
pretty,
actually
yeah.
scan it like properly because
Yeah.
sometimes UPS doesn't bother scanning. I'm like, where is it? So, but that back then I'm like, okay, to ensure this gets there, I just have to get on a plane.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's kind of cool. But now next time, like, I'll just use a ton of water, a ton of oxygen, and then Southwest will get it to you, and we'll be good. We'll be good.
Nice. Yeah.
But yeah, I need to
Well,
go check it out.
yeah, you got to check it out. I'll meet you there sometime. We'll go.
I hope we get to meet up sometime
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Sure.
like people like you, I feel like you're doing a great thing for a hobby because you're gathering all these different people that, because each of us may talk to each other once in a while, but you're like herding the cats. Like, hey,
I'm trying.
and eventually you'll be like, okay, hey, let's get on and talk about this topic about, and then you can, it'll evolve where I think you'll really add a lot of knowledge based on a hobby, and that's a great thing.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
thank you.
Actually, that's a kind of a cool idea. And yeah, cheers. It's a cool idea to maybe take a subject and then take a few of the guests that I think maybe have the best
Exactly.
perspective on, and then just kind of do a, live stream or whatever. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, because the
Yeah.
first time we talk, it's like, hey, we don't really, this guy knows nothing about this, but he
Yeah,
knows, so we're all learning.
totally. Yeah, this chat is just really getting through all of your like fundamentals, and then we could probably go deep on so many different things, but you know how it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Chat
It's a
and
good
Reef
start.
can go on and on.
Yeah.
Just as a final thing, do you want to
Mhm.
mention anything or maybe do any kind of promotion? Like, you could do some 10% off or something for people that watch the podcast. But maybe you're going to be
Sure,
doing
we
great.
could do that. Okay.
Why don't we do that?
So I'm already doing, so what I've been doing, because, for us growers, time is basically money, right? So for example, if I sell you something and you don't take delivery of it for 3 months, in that 3 months, I could grow it a good amount where if I offered you, so that's what I've been doing. I've been, hey, you could get 50% off of regular price, but you don't get it until November. Some
Mhm.
people, that's totally fun. Like, I don't have $300 to spend, but I'll spend 150. You give it to me in November, I'm good with that. So I've been
Mhm.
doing that lately. Just some people don't, money's tight for everybody. So I'm thinking this will be a win-win for both of us. I get the sale today, they get their coral at a later date, and I have time to catch up on the value differential while I grow it.
Yeah.
But on top of that, I'll offer them an extra 10% off if they mention your podcast. So anything I sell, you could get 10% off
Okay.
from your podcast.
Yeah. Let's do like a promo code like
Yeah,
BTR10 or something like that. I'll put it up on the screen.
BTR10.
Yeah.
Put it on the screen.
Beyond the Reef. Yeah. BTR10.
BTR10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Okay.
Okay.
Cool. Little promo.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, this is a great
Thank you so
chat.
much for having me.
I enjoyed kind of getting into stuff, and we'll probably get deeper at some point too. So
Sounds good.
it's awesome, man. Your corals just look so good. So I'm just like, it's super cool to talk to you finally. So thanks, man.
Thank you for having me. Have a good rest of your day.
Cheers, you too. Okay, I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Thanks. All right, guys, thank you for listening. Just a reminder, if you want to get the 10% off coupon at thirstiesreef.com, use the code BTR10 and then show proof that you subscribe to this podcast and that you follow Thirsty Reef on Instagram. This will be for the month of August. Just another shout out to our sponsor, Fauna Marine. Definitely check out some of their new exciting products that they brought to the market this year. If you have any suggestions for future guests, want to ask me a question, or just reach out in general, you can email me at beyondthereefpod@gmail.com. And if you're looking for high-quality aquacultured corals in Canada, please go to my website at fraggarage.ca. Hope to hear from you soon.